Hi everyone, this is Mr. Trio, and this is the fourth presentation in our series for the Depth Studies B, Germany, 1918 to 1945. The focus of this particular section answers the question, what was it like to live in Nazi Germany? There are four focus points. How did young people react to the Nazi regime? How successful were Nazi policies towards women and the family? Did most people in Germany benefit from Nazi rule? And finally, how did the coming of war change life in Nazi Germany? So once again, let's begin by looking at big ideas. What do these four focus points essentially tell us in the story of Nazi rule in Germany? Number one is indoctrination. This is a concept in which young people are brought into the Nazi system, taught the Nazi system, in order for them to essentially create the new Nazi society for the future. Adolf Hitler believed that this was the third great German society to come about. And essentially, what you will often see this time period referred to is the Third Reich. We're going to focus on women and family in particular, and one of the key concepts is often referred to as the 3 Ks. We'll get into this a little later, but the 3 Ks essentially stand for children, church, and kitchen. We're going to talk about the concept of German pride, how the Nazis were able to convince people that this was a better time for Germans than previous years. And the last focus point is about the shortages that the impending war will bring back to Germany when the Second World War does begin. Let's take a look at our first focus point, which is how did young people react to the Nazi regime? There are three main areas that I want to talk about, the first being schools. One of the things that the Nazi Party essentially believed in is that they needed to train young people into this new concept, this new idea of what the Nazis believed in. And they were very effective in creating a national curriculum in which these things would be taught. Topic sentence. Once the Nazi Party took over the government, it created a nationwide curriculum that taught beliefs of the Nazi Party, including master race theory, anti-Semitism, and the importance of the military. This photograph helps to illustrate how, at the beginning of the day, the school children would essentially reinforce their loyalty to their leader, Adolf Hitler, and to the Nazi Party in general. There were special programs that were specifically designed for girls, starting at age 10 through age 18, and specifically these programs were designed to teach young women how to be good mothers and how they served a very important role in producing the next generation of Germans. There were two groups in particular that were important for girls, the League of Young Girls and the League of German Maidens. Maidens is just sort of an old-fashioned word for a girl that has not been married yet. Topic sentence. The League of Young Girls and League of German Maidens were created to reinforce good German values and prepare young women to be mothers. This slide shows an award that young girls could receive, or I should say, would receive later, based on the number of children that they had. There were also programs, of course, for boys. These programs were essentially a way to get boys to think more as a group opposed to thinking as an individual. And these young programs for boys essentially were rooted in military training. So essentially, these are the young men who in the 1930s will be trained to be soldiers when the Second World War begins. Topic sentence. Hitler youth programs for boys focused on sports, camaraderie, and military training. The importance of loyalty to the Nazi Party was more important than anything else. Focus point number 2, how successful were Nazi policies towards women and families? Now, we talked about this briefly before. Women were encouraged to focus on the 3 Ks. At this time, women really were encouraged not to be professionals. There had been women who were professors, doctors, lawyers in Germany, but essentially those things were pushed aside in order for women to focus on the household, raising of children, and of course, church was also an acceptable pastime or pursuit for women. So although women may have benefited a great deal because of the programs that helped to encourage family, it also was a very limiting time when women lost positions at major universities, professional organizations, and also as members of the Reichstag. Topic sentence. Women were encouraged to focus on the 3 Ks, children, church, and kitchen. The government helped to reinforce this by having policies to encourage marriage, having children, and parenting classes. This is a medal in which was given to women who successfully had 5 or more children. So once again, this is an idea that the Nazis are trying to reinforce, that the women's role in Nazi society is to have children. One of the most bizarre programs of this time period is known as the Lebensborn program, in which young girls from good families who were not married were actually impregnated by officers of the SS who were good German soldiers in order to create a new society for the future. And this program was essentially designed for young girls to reinforce this idea of the master race, to create a new society for Germany. And it does seem a little bizarre by today's standards, of course, but it certainly was a part of this greater master race theory that was behind the Nazi regime. Let's look at the topic sentence. The Lebensborn program was designed for unmarried girls to get pregnant by racially pure SS men and then donate their child to the Führer. Focus point number 3. Did most people in Germany benefit from Nazi rule? Now, I think that your textbook does a nice job of highlighting things such as the working class, farmers, and also businessmen and industrialists that did benefit from the Nazi regime taking over, essentially. But one of the things that I really want to focus on as a part of our big ideas is that the Nazis were very effective in helping to change the attitude of German people. And one of the things that they were able to do is to get Germans to once again be proud of who they were. Germans had suffered greatly during the First World War. Later in the Great Depression, there had been shortages and hardships. And one of the things that did happen when the Nazis came to power is that industries began to produce again. And Hitler reinforced the idea that it was fine or encouraged to be proud of the fact that they were Germans. And there were lots of things in everyday society that helped to reinforce this. Volkswagen, for example, which translates roughly to the people's car, was developed essentially during this time period and became this international symbol of how Germans can do during this time period. Topic sentence. One of the reasons why the Nazis enjoyed success during this period was that they gave ordinary people back the pride that they had lost after the First World War and Great Depression. Of course, as a qualifier, it's important to remind everyone that not everyone fit into this new German society. Minorities, such as Jews, individuals that were Roma or Sinti, they did not, of course, belong to this new feel-good German idea. So, essentially, what this program was designed to do is focus on racially pure Germans, as the Nazis would have put it. Now, for our final focus point, how did the coming of war change life in Nazi Germany? Once the war began, the Nazis had initial success. And, for example, in Poland, they were very successful from a military point of view. But as the war progressed, and eventually when the United States would enter the war against Germany, the war started to change. And at that time, some of the things that had occurred in Germany beforehand came back. And one of the things that happened is that the Americans, with a very strong air force, were able to actually bomb many of the German cities, especially those that had large industries. So civilians were directly in fire areas or fire zones of these bombings, and Germans suffered from many hardships during this time period. Topic sentence. The war brought back to Germany rationing and shortages. In addition, as the war progressed, German citizens in cities like Berlin, Cologne, Hamburg, and Dresden faced bombings from American planes. The idea of total war goes a little bit further in that by mid-1944, essentially Germany saw the writing on the wall and that they realized that the war was going to be lost. And instead of trying to seek a surrender, essentially they threw everything that they had in order for the war to be won. It was during this time that very old men and young boys were drafted into the military, and women who had once held very high positions as head of the family and head of the kitchen, they were forced into factories in order to work to supply materials for the war effort. Topic sentence. In mid-1944, the war was turning against Germany. Propaganda Minister Goebbels announced emergency measures that directed all sources to the war effort. Young men were drafted into the military, and women were forced to work into factories until age 50. This was also a time that the final solution was put into place. The final solution is often referred to as the plan that brought about the Holocaust. And this photograph, for example, is from the front gate at Auschwitz, which was one of the largest concentration camps that was established by the Germans in Poland. So as the war progressed, Jews in Germany, of course, were at risk, but any Jews in Europe were also at risk of being captured by the Nazi army. Topic sentence. The final solution was the plan to murder all Jews. This was done through mass shootings, slave labor, and gas chambers at concentration camps. It is estimated that 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Let's take a look at the 4 main ideas once again. The indoctrination of young boys and girls was done in order to create a new Nazi society known as the Third Reich. Although many Nazi policies were positive towards women and families, the Nazi belief was that women had a limited role to play in the Third Reich. Many Germans had suffered in the years after the First World War, and the Nazi regime gave the promise of renewed prosperity and pride. And then finally, a wartime Germany returned the country back to many hardships and was the origin of the final solution. I'd like to thank everybody for watching our video series on Chapter 9, Depth Studies, Germany 1919 to 1945. Please visit our Google Classroom to look at sample questions as it relates to this depth study. Once again, if you have questions, feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to help you out.